welcome to the stream. I hope everyone is doing well. Um, you will see that I'm in a new place, and also I think I'm roboting as well. As in, I haven't figured out why. I don't know why. Sometimes my voice is a bit like a robot, and then it fixes itself halfway through the stream. I don't know why it's doing that. Anyway, so um, let's run a few things. Run through a few things very quickly first before we actually get started on the subject matter of today, because I think all of you know already from the thumbnail that we're going to be looking at this. I've branded him as an Indian guru. I don't know if he actually counts as an Indian guru, but he comes across as one. And I believe you say his name, Acharya Prashant. And well, to be honest, I'll explain it a bit more in a minute, why I'm doing this specific stream. Sorry, if I look that way, it's because the window's there and it's super windy this evening. So there's a tree right outside the window and it sounds like it's going to go blow down any minute. But anyway, I hope everyone is doing well. I hope everyone can hear me okay. Hey Louis, hey Religion of Peace. We all know what religion that is. Hello Renegade Law, and hello Etruska. Cool. Anyway, so very quickly, because I know people will want to get into Acharya. So first things first, I just want to run off a few things. I'm in a new surrounding. Hey, Sneaky Cactus. I'm in new surroundings. So I have just moved into my first apartment, or flat as we call it in the UK, and I've only been here for 2 weeks, and I've still not properly sorted everything out. It's a slow process. So you can see the background. I've got some stuff up on the bookshelf and stuff. But yeah, this will become a more familiar background to you guys now. So the background I used to have was in where I was living before. And yeah, so this is my new place. So that's that out of the way. The second thing that I want to say is usually in these live streams, hey Bungbean, usually in these live streams I don't really push like donations, because I don't know, maybe that's just part of my personality, but I'm just trying to turn the light up a bit. Okay, there we go. I'm not sure if that did anything. Yeah, so usually in these streams I don't push donations, and I'm not particularly planning to going forward, but in this particular stream I did want to mention donations for one specific reason. Now, I've used two different streaming softwares in the past. The main one I've used is Streamlabs, which is what I'm using now. I've also used StreamYard because it's just easier to host guests on there. So whenever I've had guests, I've used that. And hey Ibrahim, hey Kraz. And where was I going with that? Oh yeah, anyway, so I've used a couple different streaming softwares. Anyway, so Streamlabs, which I'm using today, it has a bunch of different features and I haven't used really any of them. And one of the features that you'll probably have seen on other streams is when someone sends a donation or a super chat, they can send a message along with it and it will pop up on screen, and they can put whatever they want as their name if they want to, they can put a fake name if they want to stay anonymous. And at the very start, I tried to do it and it just didn't work for some reason. But I've tried to set it up again. It's not going to have like an image or a sound, but the message should pop up on screen. And I just want to test it out. So if anyone appreciates, the content I produce and would like to send over a donation this stream, then please go ahead. I thank you in advance, but also it'll help test if this is working in an actual live stream. So yeah, that's that. I think we can get on to Acharya then. I also, for any Indians watching, I may be butchering his name because I'm calling him Acharya, but it may be Acharya. I'm going to go with Acharya though. Anyway, so yeah, so who is he? So the first thing to say is I don't actually know that much about him, and the reason I'm doing this stream is because as some of you will know, I have like a mini series that sort of comes along every now and again on the channel called Is This Person an Antinatalist? I've done Ricky Gervais, I've done Yuval Noah Harari, Morrissey, Doug Stanhope, a couple of other people. And at the moment, I'm doing research for Acharya, right? Now, I haven't been super extensive in the stuff I've watched of his before and research about him. The glance that I have made in his direction, it seems that he's an antinatalist. I don't know if it's for exactly the same reasons as like I or probably the people watching are. It may be more like spiritual, because I think he is seen as like a spiritual leader. But basically, I wanted to like watch the content that's out there, where he talks about antinatalism, and he, he's aware of the term and the concept and stuff like that. It's not just like he's saying things that sound antinatalist. Like he uses the word sometimes, so he obviously knows about it as a philosophy. So yeah, basically, I wanted to watch all the stuff that's out there to research the video, and I thought, well, I'm going to be watching a bunch of like his videos, so I might as well make a stream out of it, and we'll do a stream. So I think that's enough rambling. The thing that inspired me to make the video on him and then do this stream was there was a video that came out recently, and I'll share my screen and show you. So I've just made a little playlist with videos of him on antinatalism, or at least I think he's, some of them have antinatalism in the title. The others, I think they have antinatalism. They're like he's talking about antinatalism in them. But if he's not, we can always, skip through. Anyway, so the one that inspired it is this one, where it has antinatalism in the title, in the thumbnail. And he was asked at, I think, some sort of conference or event about antinatalism, which I've seen a bit of that clip, but I haven't watched the whole thing. So we'll start with that one. Yeah, so we can start with that. What I am going to do is I am going to be having some soya yogurt during. So if you see me eating that, then that's what I'm doing. Okay, cool. All right. Let me click on it. And I want people to let me know if they can hear this. But before we start and people let me know, I'm just going to see what people are saying in the chat. And I don't think anyone new has come in. I think I've said hello to everyone who's in there at the moment. But Kraz asks, are you going to call David Benatar in your podcast? I think you mean like, am I going to have him on? So I've invited him on once before and it didn't work out. I think he was just super busy. And yes, so at some point while I'm doing this, let me go back to me. Yeah, at some point in the future, I will reach out to him again. I haven't actually posted about this yet. I was going to share it on the community tab, but then I decided against it because it's not specifically about antinatalism. But Benatar has a new book coming out, which has just been released for pre-order online. I haven't seen any like major announcement about it or anything, but yeah, it is available for people to order online. If you just type in, it's called Very Practical Ethics, which I think is a play on Practical Ethics by Peter Singer. And he does touch on some things that Peter Singer has talked about, like charitable donations and stuff. But yeah, there doesn't seem to be anything about antinatalism in that book. Hence why I didn't share it on the community tab. But yeah, so given he's got a new book out, once it comes out, I'll have a read of it, and then, I mean, yeah, none of it specifically on antinatalism. So I might invite him on to talk about some of the stuff in that, and then also bring in some antinatalism so it's still relevant for the channel. But yeah, obviously I'd love to, have a conversation with him and have him on. So yeah, one day hopefully. And then Sneaky Cactus says that they think Acharya has posted a few times on the Ephilism subreddit. He seems pretty based, though I believe he said that the world would be neutral without humans, which obs ignores nature's horror. Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure. Obviously, I'd need to see the clip of him actually saying that, because he may have said that as in he thinks the universe without life would be neutral, and maybe he was just using humans as a shorthand. Or maybe he said humans because we're also human centered, but he would apply that to all life. Who knows? But yeah, I haven't seen that clip. Maybe it's one of the ones we're going to be watching today. But that's interesting that he's posted on. Oh, Bung Bean has sent in a super chat. Let's see if it comes up on the screen. Why is it not coming up on the screen? Oh, that's frustrating. Why is it not come up on the screen? No. I've got it turned on for... That's frustrating. I don't know. I'm not sure why that hasn't come up. That's annoying. But anyway, thank you so much, Bung Bean. Bung Bean just says based. And first super chat of the stream. So Bung Bean, you're also based. But thank you so much. But that does... Oh, okay, now it's up on screen. Whee! Let's see if it does make a noise. Hey, okay, so fucking hell, let me just bring it up again. Okay, so the message is very small, but the donation announcement is quite large. Okay, cool. So the reason it came up delayed is because I'd seen the super chat in the chat, because I've got the chat on my phone down here. But it takes time to come through to Streamlabs, and then once it comes through to Streamlabs, there's a 3-second delay until it comes up on stream. So that's why. Okay, I understand now. Okay, well that's good. It works. I wasn't a complete boomer. Yeah, thank you again so much, Bung Bean. Absolute legends helping me out there, and also helping me see if the thing's working, which it is. And I didn't realize you can like super chats now, so I've just given it a like as well. Oh, boom, I can do that as well. I didn't know. Cool. Okay, so I think it is well about time. Is that a phrase? I think it's high time that we start having a look. So, oh yeah, and also, sorry, I got distracted halfway through talking about what Sneaky Cactus said about Reddit. Yeah, so my understanding is that it's volunteers that help him out, run his social media and stuff. So I don't think it would have actually been him. Well, maybe it would have been. I don't know, like how long ago those posts are you're talking about. Maybe it was like a sufficiently long time ago where he wasn't well known enough to have, volunteers running his social media. But anyway, let's start the video. Just let me know if it isn't coming through.
I personally believe in the antinatalist philosophy, and I do not intend to procreate myself, although I would consider perhaps adopting children at some point. But
that's cool that you've got someone just standing up in the audience. I mean, I don't know how big this audience is here, but that's cool that someone, is just standing up and saying, yeah, they do believe in antinatalism. Obviously, I don't know exactly what she understands antinatalism to be, so that's another thing. But yeah, that's cool. Represent for India.
what kind of a world do you see with majority of people being antinatals, and then do you see the human civilization coming to an end?
Oh, that's interesting. So basically, she does believe in antinatalism, but she's curious about, well, if everyone adopted this view, which they're not going to, that would obviously lead, practically speaking, to the extinction of humans. And how does he view that? That's an interesting one, because I think often, and sometimes I do this, everyone does this, is they talk about, they have an ethical principle based on the immediate sort of impact of the actions you're talking about, and not necessarily recognizing the sort of like wider implications of that. And often if antinatalism is just sort of like a sort of, it's a belief you hold, but you maybe don't take it insanely seriously, or it's not something you're like really passionate about or anything, but it's just something you sort of like loosely hold. Maybe you don't really consider those things. So it'd be interesting to hear his answer to this, and she's obviously been thinking about this. It'd be interesting to hear his answer, because I don't know, he's mainly known for like spiritual sort of stuff, right, is my understanding. So he may be one of those people who is an antinatalist, and in the way that we would understand it, but he hasn't necessarily thought about like the sort of wider implications, right? So yeah, let's have a listen.
At some point in the future, or how? What
Listen,
does the
what
future
I'll
hold
say,
for us?
if not considered rightly, will appear either vile or hilarious. There is no great virtue in the human civilization continuing, first thing.
Well, he got that out there pretty quickly.
If the child is born suffering, why do you want to bring more child to the world to make them suffer? What is the point in?
That's interesting. So it does seem that his antinatalist position is informed by a focus on suffering, by suffering being sort of like the locus of moral attention, or moral consideration. So I guess in that case, because I was half expecting. So for example, I don't use this example because they're both from India, although that probably that's probably why they maybe share a sort of similar spiritual outlook, although I don't know how similar their spiritual outlooks would be. But I recently did a video on whether Mahatma Gandhi was an antinatalist, and it seems like overall he wasn't, but he expressed some sort of antinatalistic views, and some of those were for spiritual reasons. And I was wondering, because obviously Acharya exists in, not exactly the same obviously, because Acharya is around now, Gandhi was around before, but they exist in a somewhat similar cultural, religious context. And now it seems like his antinatalism is more developed than Gandhi's was, even though, well, when I say Gandhi wasn't an antinatalist, but like the antinatalist things he said aren't as developed as what this guy is saying. But I was wondering, like, in watching these videos, was I going to discover like, oh, he was also coming at antinatalism from a more spiritualistic point of view, like Gandhi. Although, Gandhi's was sort of multifaceted, but whatever. But yeah, no, it seems like his is sort of like focused around suffering and concern for the individual you're creating, which is cool.
Ensuring that the cycle continues. What is the great need or the great virtue? And what is the great catastrophe, if it all, Second thing, not everybody is born to be self-realized, right?
Okay, so there, when he says self-realized, maybe that's where the spirituality is creeping in, because now there are maybe people who are going to understand the context of what he's saying more than me, and they're going to jump down my throat when they say this. And please put your thoughts in the chat. But that suggests to me that he's talking about achieving, what people refer to as like enlightenment or liberation or whatever. And And I guess there he's saying to achieve enlightenment or liberation, you have to be a certain character of person, or you have to develop a certain character, because not everyone is going to have the temperament or be able to develop the temperament or whatever it is to achieve enlightenment, or put in place the practice, or like practice the practices that will sort of push you towards enlightenment. And so I guess that's where spirituality is creeping in, because he's saying even if you could recognize that you can come into existence and that could be a good thing because you can achieve liberation or enlightenment or self-realization once you're here, not everyone is going to be able to do that. And so why would we continue the sort of human project and produce new generations when we know that, let's be honest, probably the majority of people are not going to be the type of person that's going to become, what did he say, self-realized, self-actualized, basically achieve enlightenment, achieve liberation. So it's sort of like sacrificing all these people so that these few numbers of people can achieve some sort of spiritual goal. So yeah, that's an interesting one, how it's both suffering focused, but it's also somewhat informed by spirituality, unless he means something completely different and I've just taken this off on a random tangent.
The average kind of people will always outnumber the ones who understand. So the human race will continue, don't worry. There will be always enough people who will never understand what I am saying, and therefore they will keep on bearing 2 kids, 4 kids, 20 kids. So don't worry, human race is...
So it seems he's a bit of a realist as well, like he's not in La La Land. I just also wanted to say welcome to the chat, Asya and Barsik, Miałowski Theatre. That is one hell of a mouthful of a name. And they say soy yogurt ASMR. Exactly. I'm changing the direction of the channel. And then welcome Aviduda. There's 21 people watching. Please, if you haven't already, say hello in the chat. It'd be interesting to hear where people are watching from as well, like where around the world. Do we have anyone watching from India, where I assume this is filmed? Maybe he's traveled to another country, for this one, but let's assume it's in India. Where's everyone from? And is anyone in India at the moment watching from India?
Not at the risk of annihilation. I will never be totally understood, and the race will continue.
So then eventually, do you think the average minds will overpopulate as compared to the reasonable or the self-realized ones?
Do you think that has not been happening till this date?
It has.
The ones who understand lose interest in procreation. Therefore, who is left to procreate? All the ones who do not understand. And that has been happening since the beginning of time. So it's not a new thing that will happen.
See, if I might ask a question here. James Lovelock said, if the earth improves.
So we've got Portugal, also hey AB, and Dio as well, welcome to the chat. So we've got Portugal, Australia, USA, Israel so far. Welcome to everyone watching from all those countries.
As a result of human presence, we will flourish. If it does not, we will perish. So he's imagining a system in which the earth improves as a result of human presence. In that case, aren't human beings then an asset to the planet?
No, that's the improvement that we can bring to the earth. The improvement is that human beings have taken the status of earth down from 0 to minus 200. So what do you do when you want to improve from a point of minus 200?
Hey, Tofu Dog. Watching from west coast of the USA. So it must be like sort of midday for you guys at the moment, right? Because it's like 7:30 in the evening here. But yeah, cheers for watching, and also enjoy your videos as well.
Bring yourself up to 0. So let us reduce to 0. The improvement that we can bring to Earth cannot be positive or affirmative. It can only be reductive.
Oh, so he's basically saying any sort of improvement that we bring to the planet is simply bringing it back to the baseline that it was before, that we've taken it away from. I mean, that's a complicated question. Like, in some ways, yes, there may be other ways that we are genuinely having like a positive impact, and the situation would be worse if we weren't here. It really depends on exactly what you're talking about, and he hasn't really given examples, so yeah. And hey, CDA activism.
There were these twin towers in Noida, right? Right? And they were wrongly made or something. I do not know the nuances of the case. How did you improve the situation in that locality? By bringing them down. That's the improvement we can bring about. Dismiss, demolish, finish it off. Sounds so very nihilistic. Huh? No?
It does.
It does. So then please remember, it is only when you clear away the nonsense that there is some room, some space created for something beautiful or clean. You know what the situation of this studio was just yesterday night? You won't want to look at that picture. It was all cluttered and chaotic and in the worst shape possible. Then it was brought into this form because you were arriving. What did we do in the first place? We cleared away the nonsense. That's what this earth today needs. It has too much nonsense. First of all, that needs to be annihilated. We need Shiva for Pralay. That's the fundamental requirement. And after that...
So there's going to be some things he says which I just don't get, because he's going to use some words that aren't in English. I think it's quite common for Indians to do this, right? Is speak using both English and some language that's spoken in India. I don't know which one he would be using. So there are actually a lot of videos I found of his that if you type in Acharya Prashant antinatalism into YouTube, a bunch of videos will come up, but not in English. Some of them in English, but a bunch of them aren't in English. And I also found some in sort of like antinatalist playlists. So yeah, those ones I haven't included. So that like there's way more videos of this guy talking about antinatalism than we're going to watch today. It's just they're not in English, so I'm not going to understand them. Most of you aren't going to understand them. But also in some of these clips, he will use certain words that I'm not gonna understand. So some of the nuance may be lost on me.
We can have a great beginning. So do not.
And I've also I skimmed a few other clips before this to see which ones were in English and which weren't. And I did also see that in some of them he speaks really slowly. So we might have to speed some of them up. I'm talking, he'll say 2 words and then be silent for about 5 to 10 seconds and then say another 2 words. So sometimes it got that ridiculous.
Think that zero means zero. Zero means beauty. The entire philosophy of Buddha is Shunyavad. Shunyavad. Let it all be reduced to zero. And then you will see something magnificently beautiful.
That's interesting. So I think by zero there, he means nothingness. So simply non-existence, I would guess is what he meant. I've also seen, there was someone, I'll have to dig it out. I don't know where, I saved it, but I don't know where I saved it. There's a guy who, I think it was posted on the EA forum. For anyone who doesn't know, there's Effective Altruism forum. And it was a guy talking about why tranquility is, what was it? Let me try Google it. Let me try find it now, because it will be EA forum tranquility, and I think by tranquility, No, I'm not going to find it. I'll have to try and find it another time. But I think there they were talking about tranquility in essentially the same way as well, like undisturbedness. So I need to read more about it because I find that quite interesting. The intersection between Buddhism and antinatalism. And Already Vegan is in the chat and says, I suggested antinatalism to James Aspey as a topic for one of his new live streams, and specifically you as an interview. Oh, nice. Thanks so much for suggesting that. He seemed very interested. Would be cool if that did happen. Yeah, cool. I mean, I don't know if you sent him any way to contact me, like on Twitter or X or email. I've never spoken to him. I mean, I'm aware of who he is. I was actually watching one of his streams earlier today. But yeah, I've been aware of who he is for a few years. I don't think you can really be in the vegan community and not be aware of who he is. Yeah, no, that would be really cool. So thank you for suggesting that. Yeah, if he reaches out, I look forward to that, and thank you. It will be down to you if it happens. Massilia is also in the chat. I nearly missed you, Massilia. The chat was going to push you up, but thanks so much for joining. Cool. Okay, let's keep going.
What that thing would be, we do not know, and we cannot even predict. But what we know is that what we have currently is extremely nonsensical. So let's do what we must and clear this away.
Right, that's that one. Oh, shit. So that's that one. Now this next one is called Parents Apologize to Your Children. Now this one, I'm guessing what he's going to be doing is talking about... I spoke about this with Karima Kerma on one of our discussions. And also I think I went to Hamburg recently and met Karim and also Lenny, who's been in a couple of videos. And I was speaking to Karim while I was there about this, I think, as well. About this reversal of indebtedness, I guess you could refer to it, or the reversal of obligation or reversal of duty, or I don't know however you want to put it. I guess you could put it all those ways. In that a lot of people see children as being indebted to their parents because they see coming into existence as a good thing. So they've done something good for their children, and therefore their children, they sort of owe them in some way, I guess is how they see it. But if you flip that and you don't see coming into existence as a good thing, or you even see it as a bad thing, then that completely flips it. And then it's sort of like, well, you've just essentially put this burden on someone and put all these desires they now have and obligations they now have. So you sort of have an obligation to them to help them meet those. So I'm guessing that's what he's going to be talking about. Oh, we've got another donation. So this one is from Duz. It says, keep up the great work. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. And thank you for also checking because the first one, the first donation was a super chat. So that checked if that was working. And then Duz just tried the Streamlabs, and that's now working as well. So thank you so much, Duz. And what I'm going to do is I am going to... Actually, what I'm going to do is, because you can add an image and a sound to when there's been a donation. So what I'll do is I will consult anyone who has joined the Patreon, gets access to a small supporter Discord. So there's a small community of us on there, and we meet monthly and hang out and stuff, and they get early access to videos and all that sort of stuff. So what I might do is put a little post in there and see if people have recommendations for what sort of sound or image would be like a cool one to have and related to the topic. So yeah, cheers for that, Does. Absolute legend. And Already Vegan has put in the chat again saying, I couldn't provide contact, but he did note it down, and I mentioned you are friends with David. James and his wife seem borderline anti-natalist anyway, having agreed not to have kids. Cool. Well, okay, cool. Well, I guess he'll be able to reach out if he wants. But I'll try and find a way to contact him, and I'll send him a message just saying, here's my details if you ever want to, set something up. So that would be really cool. Thanks so much, Already Vegan. All right, nice. Let's continue. So if a child goes and asks his parents that, why did you give birth? Why did you give me a birth? That's it's a bit of a butchering of the English language there. Then what should relation-minded parents answer? I don't quite mean what they mean by relation-minded parents there. I guess it's... Yeah, I'm not quite sure exactly what they mean there, but let's see what he says anyway.
First of all, if the child says, why did you bring me into this world? The parents must straight away apologize. No, not all.
This is what I mean by the slow talking.
Laughing matter. Thing of basic honesty. And it is because...
And for anyone that doesn't know, this guy's vegan as well. He was recently in... I don't know if anyone's seen Christspiracy. It's a new sort of vegan documentary about... it sort of posits that animal rights had more of a role to play in religion, specifically Christianity, than is sort of given credit, and there's sort of been a cover-up of that, and people really aren't making full contact with the message surrounding animals that sort of like the large religions were preaching when, at their sort of core. Anyway, it's whatever you take away from it, it's a very interesting and enjoyable documentary, so I'd highly recommend everyone go watch it. Although at the moment I believe you can't watch it anywhere. I'm not really sure what they're doing with distribution, to be honest. I watched it in the cinema when it was in London, but I'm not sure what they're doing with people watching it online. But anyway, he was interviewed as part of it. They interviewed a range of sort of religious and spiritual vegans, and he was he was interviewed as part of it. And there's a range of videos of him talking about veganism, just like antinatalism, like this. And also I checked out his website as well. On his website I could find one place antinatalism was mentioned, but veganism has its own page on his website. So yeah.
Parents have first of all committed the mistake of bringing another person into this world of agony, longing and suffering, that they compensate by investing themselves in raising the kid.
This guy seems pretty based on antinatalism.
That is why it is imperative for the parents to
Why is he speaking this slowly? I don't understand.
bring education to the kid, give food to the kid, spend money on the kid. It is a compensation.
Thing is, I want to speed it up and put it on 2 times speed, because then it will bring his words together. But it will mean when he does speak, it will be just be like, and then it will be a silence, and then. So I don't really know what we can do, to be honest.
Have you seen how much of parents' time, especially the mother's time, gets spent on the kid? It has to be done. It is a thing of justice. It is not a favor to the kid. The parents owe it to the kid. And the kid is very justified in asking, did I really plead to you to bring me into this world? Did I send a formal application?
Which dotted line did I sign on? That's interesting. He seems to be, because I thought maybe he'd be one of these people who sort of, has heard about the concept of antinatalism, and he's like, yeah, but that's sort of what I believe, but doesn't really put much sort of thought into it. But yeah, it seems like he's actually thought about this quite a lot, and he's thought about, what would this mean for parent-child relationships and the duties surrounding that. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I'm like, I'm impressed.
You, in your moment of personal wisdom and planned indiscretion.
And also, it's cool that he's just like not scared to say, because like, I might be wrong. Please, someone correct me if they know more about this guy. But I swear he's pretty big, right? Like, I might be overexposed to him because I'm antinatalist and vegan, and so I sort of, because he's antinatalist and vegan, it seems, I might get, sort of like more things coming to me from him because of the algorithm. But I think he is like relatively big. I think, in fact, actually, his YouTube channel has over 2 million subscribers. So, yeah, it seems like he's got a decent following.
Or unplanned lust gave birth to me. Now I sue you.
He's talking about suing people. Very controversial. Maybe you know what? It'd be interesting. Maybe he's heard about Raphael Samuel, the guy who threatened to sue his parents, because he's also from India.
Now I demand damages. And all the money that gets spent on the kid is actually a compensation. Compensation for that moment of indiscretion.
That's mad. He's going hard in on parents.
It could be conscious indiscretion by way of a planned birth, or it could be unconscious indiscretion when you say, oh, the child just came, we didn't plan it.
I think it must be pretty difficult, if you're an antinatalist parent, because it will make you sort of go above and beyond the average person in wanting to provide for your child and, ensure that, the harm they come to is as little as possible. But it's also like, you've got to be careful, because you can go too far with that, and it can actually backfire on the child, because if you coddle them too much, they're not going to be able to build the character to be able to make their own way in life. Because let's be honest, it's, for most people, even though obviously if you're an antinatalist and you've had a child, you view yourself as having, done something you shouldn't have done, but you've done it now. And it's not practical, even though you've done that, it's not practical for most people going forward to have their child living with them for their whole life. Maybe some people in some cultures, that is something that is practical, and they're willing to do that or whatever. but for many people it won't be practical, and also it will be that, you know, maybe the case, or probably will be the case, that the child themselves, once they grow up, they won't want to live with their parents. You know, they'll want independence, and so it's a fine balance to strike. You know, I guess for any parent, but particularly antinatalist parents who sort of really feel the weight of their duties to their child, balancing that with not essentially coddling them too much, and making them ill-prepared and ill-equipped for life on their own. Because the way he's speaking, it seems like he just wants, you know, kids to sue the shit out of their parents, which I don't think will be the... I don't think that's practically the best way forward when it comes to parent-child relationships, even if you are antinatalist and you view them as having wronged you. I just think, practically speaking, that's not the best way to go about things, and it's just going to burn bridges. But it's a tricky tightrope to walk. So I have sympathy for antinatalist parents.
Whether conscious or unconscious, the fact is that it is an indiscretion. Because it is an indiscretion, so you pay for it. Now you know why you have to pay so much for the kids' school fee. It is a fine. It is a fine that you are paying. You are being penalized by existence. Now you know why the mother has to carry the kid for 9 months. The mother is being severely penalized. What made you go so blind in emotion or in lust that you allowed yourself to get pregnant? Now pay the fine.
It's a bit one-sided there, like in, you know, because it takes two to tango, so it is the man and the woman's fault. But yeah, so I'd say he's a bit one-sided in his criticism there, but maybe he's gonna go more hard on men in a minute.
Now a shrieking, screeching thing will come into the world. Pay the fine. It begins by paying the hospital fees. No kid gets born without the hospital charges being paid. Does that not tell you that the whole thing starts as some kind of...
Hang on, because this is supposed to be research as well, so I am actually just going to get a little notepad up so that I can make some notes while I'm listening to him.
Penalty. See, after you fight with someone, you are carried away to the hospital. You know that something wrong has happened, that's why you have been brought to the hospital. And when you get pregnant, you are taken to the hospital. Don't you see the parallel? So that's true. And every kid must ask this. And therefore, giving the best environment to the kid to rid him of all body and social identification is the minimum that the parents can do for him. The parents have given the kid the cage that the body is. The body is a cage, and as the kid grows up...
Oh, sorry, I didn't realize the the keyboard was that loud. I'll mute myself.
There is much more to engage him. And it's not merely a mistake, it's actually a crime. There was nobody to suffer. and you unnecessarily brought suffering to the world. Now the minimum that you can do is liberate him. Give him conditions that would enable.
It does, I know obviously he doesn't mean this, but it does sound a bit like when he said, there was no one to suffer and now you've created someone. The least you can do is liberate him. It does sound a bit like he's telling people to kill their kids. If you took that out of context. I know he won't be saying that, and he's about to elaborate on it. But it just for a second there, it did sound like, is he telling people to kill their children?
His liberation. And that is the role, the dharma of parents. Give kid conditions that would enable his liberation. I repeat, this is not a favor that parents do to the child. This is their obligation. And if you cannot meet this obligation, then you are committing a double crime.
Oh, I thought he was going to drop the C-bomb there.
The first is to give birth. The second is to give birth without having the credentials to act as worthy parents.
I wonder what the comments on the video are like. We'll have a look once this one's finished.
Let all parents remember this. The day the child is born,
Fuck me. It's like he's forgotten how to speak. It's like he starts and then he goes, fuck, how do I use my fine motor skills to blow air out of my mouth and make noises with it?
he's born as someone to whom you are deeply indebted. You have to clear the debt. It is not that the child is indebted. The parents must be very clear on who the debtor is. Classically, it has been said that the child owes a lot to the parents. Matra rin, pitra rin. The fact is totally different. The parents owe a lot to the child. So be very cautious while giving birth. When you are giving birth, you are actually giving birth to a big debt, a humongous debt. And you have to settle that debt. Otherwise, you won't be able to settle in peace. If you don't want to increase your debt manifold, then be very cautious while giving birth. Giving birth is not a plaything. There was nothing else to do. So we just decided to break the bed and a few babies we got. Here are two. Where is the third one? Oh, where is the third one? Look behind the almirah. Under the carpet, behind the curtain. Somewhere a third must be there. It's not a casual affair. Giving birth is not for kids. Law just says that there is a legal age, 18, 21 and such things. First of all, giving birth requires that there has to be mental maturity. Unfortunately, 99% of the world's population is not at all mentally mature enough.
Just want to say hey to a few new people. There's a skeptical detractor, Kevin Antinatalist. I did see a couple other people as well. Human Singh. Hey Kartik. And have I missed anyone? White Crow. I don't think I've missed everyone. And Helper OK. Great. Now there's a car alarm going off outside. I don't know if you guys can hear that.
To be parents. The funny thing is that the 1% who are mentally mature enough to be...
You know what? I've just thought that may actually be the tree, like maybe a branch has broken off or something and landed on the car, because it is super windy out there. Oh no, it stopped. It stopped. Right.
Parents would never want to give birth.
Yeah, I've just seen already. Vegan is saying how my mic sounds weird. Yeah, I just sorry, I just listened to it as myself. I'm not sure why it does that. It goes in and out of doing that. It is, you know, I'm pressing mute and unmute sometimes on the microphone, but apart from that, I'm not touching it. I do not know why it does this sometimes. Cool. Anyway.
So all the instances of baby making belong to those who should never have been allowed to make babies. It's almost like a 5-year-old girl giving birth. Oh, she looks 25. She's actually 5.
Sorry, there's no way you can have a 5-year-old who looks 25 years old. I mean, I get like he's trying to make a general point, but that was a bad example. If someone shows me a 5-year-old that looks 25, I will eat my hat.
A 4-year-old boy giving birth. Oh, he looks like a brute of 34. 6 feet, 80 kilograms. He is actually just 4. Just as a 4-year-old runs behind mama, this 34-year-old runs behind the kid's mama.
A couple of people in the chat are saying that it's maybe to do with me having 2 mics enabled. I'm just gonna check that, but I don't think it is that, because let me just check. Okay. Okay, so multi-output device. No. No, there's only one. I don't know why. I'll just have to I'll try to look into it more, but to be honest, I'm pretty sure I've looked at everything, and I mean, maybe it's something obvious, but we'll just have to see.
we must fully understand what procreation is beyond the social myth. There is a huge social myth around becoming parents, giving birth, babies. We don't beget babies. We beget stories. We do not know what a baby really is.
Oh, sorry.
We fall for
I forgot I wasn't, I didn't have the screen share on again. Yeah, cheers, Asya. My bad.
stories. We have stories. We don't know reality.
Okay, so I don't know if you heard the bit when I wasn't screen sharing. Basically, he was just saying that you don't, he was basically saying, like, I think he's basically saying is that the children that we are wanting to create are simply stories in our heads, and so we're not really wanting to create the child, we're wanting to create the story in our head, if you get what I mean. And I guess one example of that is if you say to someone, you know, you could have a kid, but they could end up being someone who, you know, maybe they struggle with drug addiction their whole life, and they have to go in and out of living with you, and you know, it's a large financial burden, blah 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 blah. Or the kid may be someone who, you know, you have a meaningful relationship, etc., etc. Now, most people are probably going to say, oh well, no, I wanted the meaningful relationship one. I didn't want the sort of person who's going to be going in and out of my home, struggling with drug addiction, blah blah blah. So it's like, okay, so they didn't just want to have a kid then, did they? Because if they just wanted to have a kid, then they would weather the storm, whatever it is. They are just more attached to the story in their head of like, I want the life that I think this will bring me, which I think he's referring to as a story. But maybe I've misunderstood him.
And they become part of those stories. Those stories are all false. Open your eyes and look at what the thing actually is like. It is not the fairy tale we have been told it is. It is something drastically different.
All right, and that's that one. It always makes me slightly more skeptical of someone when they're selling an online course, which, you know, maybe isn't warranted, but, you know, whether he's selling his online course or not, it doesn't change what he's just said in that video. Right, so the next one is on antinatalism and euthanasia, which will be interesting to see what he says about euthanasia. Because I guess we know what his view is on antinatalism. And also, I don't know exactly when all these clips are from, you know, so there may be some clips from when he was not maybe it was like early on in his antinatalist thinking, maybe it's summer when he's more developed. So, for example, the one we just watched actually was in 2019, the first one was 2022, and this next one is 2023, so, okay, so he's had pretty developed thinking about it since 2019. But I just want to see some of the comments. So this guy's saying, he says parents must be responsible before childbirth. However, at the end, he says a very meaningful line: for childbirth, we need not just physical fitness, we need mental fitness too. Otherwise, after 100 years, only animals will be there in human form. Most parents are mentally unfit to give birth. Yeah, it seems like there's a lot of agreement. Yeah, so this is interesting. This is what I was commenting on. So how to liberate children. I became a mother due to social norms, but now I don't want my child to suffer as I am suffering. Yeah, I feel for her. Yeah, there's a lot of sympathetic people. I can't really see anyone pushing back here. Yeah. Anyway, so let's go on to the next one: antinatalism and euthanasia. This one will be interesting because it'll be interesting to see. Look, this guy gets like decent audiences. Like he's able to pack out a venue like this or book a venue like this, which is pretty cool. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see if his view on euthanasia is at all related to his view on antinatalism. So the through line that I can see, and which I also hold, although I think there's many reasons that I think someone can be in support of euthanasia, but I think an additional reason can stem from antinatalism, which is that none of us, chose to come into existence. None of us like signed on the dotted line, like he said, or none of us gave consent. And so, at the very least, we must be able to, in a dignified, have access to a dignified way, and a hopefully painless way of exiting the situation, leaving the situation which we never even signed up to in the first place. So yeah, that's and then I guess another way that someone could tie antinatalism to it that I can think of is, well, coming into existence is a harm, and one of those harms can be seen as death or the dying process, and simply one of the sort of very least things we can do is ameliorate that harm, or counter that harm by putting certain things in place so that people don't have to go, don't have to experience it as much. And euthanasia can be one of those ways. But anyway, let's see what he says.
Several times in each chapter, we see how helpless Krishna is. We find weakness lording over strength.
Hang on, I think that's like a weird intro thing. This is the actual clip.
So Radhika's question is that regarding antinatalism, okay, so is it high time for India to follow the one-child policy like China did? And is euthanasia for humans?
Oh, this will be interesting. This is a controversial one because the one-child policy, I mean, it can have antinatalist motivations in the philosophical sense, but it could also have other motivations like just pure population control, like demographics and stuff. But it's an extra leap. It's like he holds an antinatalist position, and then as a separate thing, it's like, well, how do I want that to inform public policy? And people have a range of views on that, right? Some people will be more prone to coercion, and that'll be like a one-child policy. Other people will be more skeptical of coercion or opposed to it, and they won't want to they won't want to implement any such policy. But anyway, yeah, let's see what he says.
Should it be made legal in India?
See, India is a concept, right? When you say India must do something, keeping in mind that we are some kind of functioning democracy, at least as of today. I don't know about 2024, but at least till today we are a functioning democracy. So how can India have any kind of policy if Indians are not, first of all, convinced about that policy? You remember the emergency times, right? And there was a policy to control population, and it was enforced, and it backfired. And since then, no politician has had the guts to talk about population control. So first of all, Indians have to be educated on the need, and only when there is some kind of at least a loose consensus, then somebody.
So, just for a tiny bit of context, and there will be other people who know more about this than me, obviously. But I think the context he's speaking in, and the reference he just made to former types of population control, there was a period in recent Indian history where there was a campaign of forced sterilization as a form of population control. And so that may be what he's referring to, and maybe he's taking the approach of like, I think reducing the birth rate is good, and maybe certain public policies have a place, but we have to be very careful not to inflame the scars that are left by, the acts of forced sterilization in our recent past. Is maybe the angle he's coming at it from.
Can enact a policy, and then something can be enforced as well. But if the population itself is unwilling, then such a measure would fall flat. But the good news is that probably now there is an emerging consensus, and people are better educated, and I hope better sense prevails, because there are a lot of dissenting voices as well. People who talk of religious demographics and such things, who say, if this kind of a policy comes, then our numbers will shrink and the proportion of the other group would expand, and there are just so many insecurities.
Yeah, I've heard about this. There's like tensions between, I think it's Hindus and Muslims. I'm not fully aware of all the sort of nuances of the dynamics there, but this is also interesting. The Ahimsa Fellowship, I've heard about this before, and I'm pretty sure, I don't know if it was in another stream or it wasn't on this channel at all, but I've come across the Ahimsa Fellowship before, and I think what it is it's sort of like I think it's like an animal. So, well, it says there at the bottom, right? Like, it's kind of cut off on the screen, you can see, but it's like an animal sort of organisation or initiative to get people into animal activism. Maybe it has links to effective altruism, I'm not quite sure. But yeah, no, it's, if it is what I'm understanding it to be, it's good that it exists.
Concerns. If
And
those
it's cool he's talking about
can
it.
be somehow glossed over or ironed out, I think it's a beautiful idea to have a population control policy, a one-child policy or something. At least incentivize those who have the right kind of consciousness. If you cannot disincentivize, at least help those who choose not to have kids or have just one kid. They must be strongly supported, promoted, honored. Euthanasia, well, that does not have too much to do with veganism or population control or even animal welfare or rights. But euthanasia is surely related to the matter of human dignity. When it comes to spirituality or self-knowledge, euthanasia definitely is an issue worth thinking of. So I think it behoves human dignity to have the right to choose one's death. And euthanasia has to be distinct from suicide. It is
This guy is based.
it is a thing of realizing that the time has come and the body is not going to hold up. The probability of recovery is just too slim. Therefore, it does not make sense to just drag on. And when it comes to that, and when medical experts can certify that the probability of revival or some kind of normal functioning life is less than, let's say, 1%, then the fellow must have the choice to opt out of life. I suppose it's dignified to go rather than just overstay your utility, your joy. No point just hanging on. Live a great life, live deeply, have challenges, have purposes, fulfill them, and then depart with honor, depart with dignity, depart as a matter of choice, not as a matter of chance or compulsion.
She didn't know at the end there. She was like, is he finished, or is this just one of his times where he takes ages to say another thing? No, that was a good one. I didn't really have anything to say in reaction to that one, because I just kind of agreed with him. I think it was pretty cool to hear him say that. Okay, right, we've just seen that. Now this next one is called Don't Blindly Rush into Good Deeds. Now, with good in inverted commas. Now, I've added this one because it came up in my search when I was searching for him talking about antinatalism. So, even though it's not apparent, I'm assuming he talks about it in the video. But it is also 25 minutes. So what we'll do is we'll put it on 1.5 speed. And when he gets to the topic, we'll then slow it down.
Consumption of
So with regards to the what must be done versus what.
Okay, hang on. So let's at least for the question, let's just see. So she said with regards to what has to be done.
You want to do. There are a lot of things, like one is environment, veganism. So we understand that we have to choose one activity which is most critical. When you say critical, it is like most people are affected by it. So when I came to Mumbai here, I could clearly see a difference in the air which is there in Bangalore and which is here. I feel very suffocating sometimes. So what you said about understanding the issue, studying about the issue and then taking an action is probably an ideal case. So not everybody is devoted to go to that length. So what I think is wherever you are, start from there. If I'm planting trees in one particular area, it is definitely not harmful. It's beneficial for the people who are there.
It has to be thought of in terms of the overall opportunity cost, you see. You have to understand this. And it's not that you have to think of the most important issue. You also have to think of the most effective way to tackle that issue. You may very well be able to rightly identify the most important issue, but what if you are using the least effective way to tackle that issue?
This guy is so based.
And you know what is the problem with the less effective ways? The problem is not merely that they are less effective. The problem is that they make you feel that you are doing something effective. So they absolve you of your responsibility. You start saying, you see, I did my bit. You see, I did my bit. And when you say, I did my bit, you become licensed.
Is it? What is my mic doing? So let me just talk through it, see what my mic's doing. Testing. Okay, yeah, that is super weird. Testing, 1, 2, 3. Let me see if there's any double. Okay. Okay, let me. Fuck. Okay. Now, what does my audio sound like? Testing. 1, 2, 3. That sounds much better. People tell me. Is that good for you guys? I fucking knew it was something obvious. I fucking knew it. Basically, on Streamlabs, you have this bit called the mixer, where it just shows all of the audio that's going into the stream. And basically there's a bunch of different audios in there, and there was one right at the bottom that I haven't seen, which was a copy of the one that I of my main volume, and I don't know why that was there. How fucking long has that been there? Because I've had this issue in my streams for quite a while. Jesus. Oh my god. Sometimes it's embarrassing how long I've been doing this and how shit I still am at some things. Anyway, cool. Let's. I'm glad we got that sorted out. So let's continue with this one. Oh, and welcome to the chat, Alan. And Alan is asking what the guy's name is. So the guy's name is Acharya Prashant. And you can. I will put his name in the chat in case you don't know how to spell it. Welcome to the chat, Zachary, as well. Cool. Okay, nice one. Let's bring it back.
Then entitled to do a lot of other kinds of rubbish. I'll say something with respect to this tree plantation thing. You see, it is very well known that...
Oh, what are people saying that it's doubled up again? Testing. Are you sure? Because I'm listening to myself on the stream now and it seems perfectly fine.
One tree over the course of 40 years would absorb...
What do you mean now it's fixed? Are you guys having me on? Are you trying to make me look like a mug? Going into the settings and then being like, "Oi, dickhead, it was fine anyway."
Just 1 ton of carbon dioxide. How effective is that, please? And that is if that tree lives to...
Okay, I know why it is. Yep. Okay, it was when I was in this screen. Okay, I get you. Yeah. Okay.
Get 40 years old. One tree over 40 years absorbs 1 ton of carbon dioxide. In 1 year, how much does it absorb? 0.025. 0.025 ton, 1. Whereas having 1 less child causes a difference of 60 tons per year. Now, do you want to plant trees happily and then go home and have a child? 1 child is 60 tons per year. And 1 tree is 0.025 tons.
Yeah, I mean, personally, I understand the point he's making, but I find going down the environmental route is a bit tricky. I just don't think it's... I've already spoken about this loads in different ones. Yeah, I just think it's a bit of a tricky tightrope to walk, and I don't think it's worth going down that route. I think it's cleaner to stick on the other stuff. Welcome to the chat as well, Cloudy Gaming, and also Omar. Welcome to the chat. And Cloudy Gaming is in India. Thanks so much for tuning in, Cloudy Gaming. Cool. Okay, so let's continue.
Per year. But by planting a tree, you start feeling that you have done your bit. And you feel very happy. Now you can go on a date, get married, and then obviously you will have kids. And this is the kind of thing I become very unhappy with. Very, very unhappy with. All the measures that social activism is taking can contribute not 1% of that which having a child less does. But then all the do-gooders are roaming and they're going around with a lot of pride. You know, we are climate warriors. What climate warrior? What?
This guy, he savaged parents already, and now he's savaging, like, how would you call it, like environmentally or socially minded people who then go on to reproduce. This guy is brutal.
Climate warrior. What is this tree plantation thing?
He literally doesn't give a fuck. It's so funny.
Devote your resources, your energy, your Fridays, your Saturdays, or your Sundays to doing the right thing. Have an awareness campaign. Go to young people in schools and colleges and tell them not to procreate. That's what you must be doing. Instead, you are feeling good by planting trees. Not that planting trees is harmful. I am fully in support of it. But then the opportunity cost is great. You understand opportunity cost? The same time that you invested in planting a tree could have been invested in delivering a presentation in a particular college. By planting the tree, you refuse to make that presentation in the college. And this is criminal. This is outrightly criminal. I do not support this. So do not say we are little beings, we can only do this much. The ones who are doing this much are the ones causing the problem.
It'd be so interesting to have a conversation with this guy because, like, he seems to, like, share quite a lot of the outlook that I have. Like, I think we do differ in some places, but, like, he's vegan, he's antinatalist. He thinks that we should have a focus on effectiveness. Yeah. So it would be interesting to, like, have a conversation with him and understand where he got those ideas from, and also maybe ask him about a few other things. That would be interesting. But I mean, this guy's way too big. There's no way like now I'm going to be, maybe in the future, if all goes well for me, I'll maybe be able to build some sort of a platform where I'll have the reach to be able to speak to someone like him, but he's pretty big.
Misplaced climate activism is not solving the problem, it is a part of the problem. Everybody is becoming a climate activist without realizing what is it that really needs to be done. There are a few things you must understand. At the root of the climate catastrophe lies man's tendency to consume. And man consumes in three clear ways and three distinct ways. Man wants to consume the entire world. And the entire world consists of human beings, prakritic beings, which you call as natural beings, and man-made things. Whenever you will look around you, these are the three kinds of things you will find, right? Other human beings, other natural beings, and other man-made things. Man consumes all three, and consumption of all three leads to carbon emissions. When you consume another human being, what do you get? What do you get? Kids. And that is the biggest cause of carbon emissions. When you consume man-made things, again, what do you emit? Carbon. Because whatever there is man-made is made using energy, and energy comes from fossil fuels. So whenever you are consuming something man-made, you are causing carbon emissions. And the third thing is consumption of natural resources. Whether you are eating vegetables, whether you are a vegan or not, or whether you are consuming meat, all of this is highly carbon emitting. Even if you are vegan, you will eat grains at least. Where will the grains come from? Where will the grains come from? They can only come by felling forests. But then you start feeling great. I am a vegan, I'm holier than thou. The earth does not have resources to support 8 billion or 11 billion vegans. So do not be so happy about just being a vegan. Veganism doesn't help the cause of climate change beyond a point. We need two things. One, less people and less consumption. And both of them together. Are you getting it? Even if one of them is missing, you are gone. US has not too many people. Just 32 crores are there. And yet they are the biggest carbon emitters in the world because they consume. On the other end is China. China, the per capita consumption is 1/5 or 1/10 of the USA. And yet they are number 2 on the carbon list. Why? Because they are just too many. You need a situation.
Yeah, so Omar is saying in the chat about, if everyone was vegan, it would be a reduction. I agree with you. I think he's kind of, pun intended, over-egging the pudding a bit. But I get his point. He's basically saying all of us, simply by existing, are doing some harm. Even if you are vegan, which is better than not being vegan, nonetheless, you are still causing some harm, is the point he's trying to make in general.
Where there are not more than 2 or 3 billion people in the world. That has been scientifically calculated to be the sustainable limit. And currently we are 8 billion. We need to reduce it to 2 or 3 billion. That's the first thing. Secondly, these 2 or 3 billion people have to be spiritual so that they do not have a tendency to consume. Unless you are spiritual, you are bound to be living a consumption-centric life. The very urge for liberation, when it doesn't find an outlet, it becomes the urge to consume. Do you see this? Where does the tendency to consume so much come from? It comes from the misidentified and thwarted urge towards liberation. If you will not provide liberation to a man, his energies will flow in the direction of consumption.
That's interesting. That's a bit like the concept of the Buddhist, well, I don't know if it's just a Buddhist concept, but I know Buddhists use it, of the hungry ghost. Of like, we all have like a hungry ghost that's constantly wanting more, even if, say, you get a TV, everyone else gets a TV, so someone wants a slightly bigger one, and blah, blah, blah. It's like the hedonic treadmill or whatever you call it. It's this hungry ghost always wanting more. When you achieve one thing, it brings you satiation or satiety for a brief period of time, but then you want more, blah, 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 blah. And I guess the opposite of that is like treading the path of liberation, like trying to subdue, not subdue, but move away from the hungry ghost. However you want to put it. I don't know what the most sort of like, spiritual or accurate way of putting it is. But yeah, so I get what he means.
So these are the 2 things that we require. One, less population. Secondly, the population that remains must be highly spiritual in its outlook. Only then can you avoid the climate catastrophe. All this tamasha that is happening on the streets will not help. Instead, it is making people feel good about themselves. I look at these warriors, climate warriors, young men and young women. Some of them were fighting the police recently in Bombay. And I thought to myself, will these young people refuse to have a kid? No, that they won't. Here for a...
And it's interesting as well, I don't know if he'll cover this bit, because so far he's only been speaking about procreation in the environment in terms of if you procreate, it will have an environmental impact. But he hasn't spoken yet about, these people protesting about the environment, blah, blah, blah. If they have a kid, they are putting their kid into the dangerous situation that they are protesting, which to me makes no sense.
They are prepared to lay down their lives, and I respect that sentiment. Seriously, I respect that. But then I want to question the efficacy of that. You don't want these 2,700 trees to be cut down. But then if you get one child, that is the equivalent of cutting down 1,00,000 trees. Bringing one child to the world is the equivalent of cutting down 1,00,000 trees. Maybe more. Just do the maths.
I'm pretty sure when he says 1,00,000 trees, lakh is like in India means a specific number, but I forget what the number is. But I remember someone telling me this before.
But you show so much of sentiment. When a tree is hacked down, and you show no sentiment when you see family after family procreating, you in fact send them congratulations.
Right, skeptical detractor has just clarified. Oh, a few people have clarified. 4 people have clarified. Religion of Peace, Kartik, Bryant, and skeptical detractor. So 1 lakh is 100,000. Right, cool. Thank you for that.
Messages. Wow, nice, Didi. Good that you had your second or third kid now. Returning from the climate demonstration, what does this young girl do? She calls up her Didi and says, so Didi, was the delivery fine? What nonsense is this? Do you understand? Climate catastrophe is a spiritual problem. And it can only have a spiritual solution. All else that you see happening around you in the name of climate activism is just tamasha. It will not help. It will boost up a lot of egos. It will give fame and limelight to a lot of young people. They will become climate warriors. They will become saviors of the world. Tomorrow, one of them might even get the Nobel Prize. So much of limelight is there, you know. This young man, he has really brought this issue to popular consciousness. Let's bestow upon him the Nobel Prize for Peace. All that can happen. But all that will be just symbolic, not helpful at all. Or even if it helps, it will help only to a very marginal degree. Do you get the real solution? From 8 billion, take it back to 2 billion. And you don't have to kill people for that. You just have to educate and encourage people to not to reproduce. Even if they want to have kids, let them have at max 1 kid. And second thing is, this 2 or 3 billion that finally remains must be deeply spiritual from the heart, so that it does not have a tendency to feast upon the world. Are you getting it? But the way climate activism is going, it is going in a very blind direction. People are trying to get governments to intervene by way of legislation. What can the governments do? It's a democratic world.
So I'm going to put it on 1.5 just to see if he comes back to antinatalism, but we'll see. He may have said all he's going to say in this clip about antinatalism.
The governments will only do what the people want them to do. And the people want only cosmetic steps to be taken. So the governments will take cosmetic steps. In fact, chances are, absence of spiritual education. Do not talk of 2 problems. There is just 1 problem. That problem is man's misguided and uneducated ego. Unless you educate the ego about who it really is, it will keep proceeding in the direction of blind consumerism. Lack of spiritual education has brought this catastrophe upon us. Will you say it is his private matter? How can I interfere? These are personal choices. We have to respect personal choices. These are not personal choices anymore. If you are reproducing, you are bringing down entire humanity. Time bomb in his home. A huge time bomb that will bring down the entire community. Will you say it's his private matter because he is doing it within his home? Tell me, please. Somebody sets a bomb inside his home, and the bomb is powerful enough to bring down the entire building, not merely his apartment. Will you say it is his private matter? How can I interfere? These are personal choices. We have to respect personal choices. These are not personal choices anymore. If you are reproducing, you are bringing down entire humanity.
So this one's a complicated one, right? So I understand. So there's 2 ways that you can say that reproduction isn't just a personal choice. The first way is, I think, the way that will come to our minds, it comes to my mind mostly, is that it's not a personal choice because there's a third party involved, right? Like, you're not able to ask the person you're creating if they're okay with being created, right? Like, they don't, like, life seems like something you'd kind of have to, like, read the terms and conditions for and sign on the dotted line. So in that way, it's not just a personal choice, right? Just as like, it's not just my personal choice to decide to force someone onto a plane and send them to another country or something like that, right? Put them in a completely foreign environment they're not used to. So why would it be a personal choice to just create someone out of thin air? The other way is the way he's talking about, how the impacts that the child will have is not simply a personal choice. So he's gone the environmental route. You could also say, if you create a child, there's a high likelihood that they will probably not be vegan and therefore be responsible for a lot of, intentionally paying for animals to be killed in farms and laboratories and places like that. So in that way, you could say it's not a personal choice either. Where it becomes a tricky line, and I can understand those two things, especially the first one, as arguments. But where this rhetoric does begin to slide into somewhere that could go down a concerning path is, he's talking about likening having a child to sort of planting a bomb in your apartment that's going to blow up the whole of the rest of the block. Now, if that were the case, if someone was planting a bomb in their apartment and it could blow up the entire block, then I think people would be warranted to burst into that person's apartment and essentially physically apprehend them and put them in jail, most likely. Now, I don't think he is saying here that we should be physically reprimanding people and putting them in jail if they're trying to have a kid or they do have a kid. But you can see where this logic goes, right? If this sort of rhetoric caught on in the general populace and became politically popular, you could see why that rhetoric could lead to a lack of respect for people's civil liberties and, starting to be quite authoritarian. So I can understand the intellectual point he's making. I wouldn't really harp on this point as much as he is, because I think it's rhetoric that can lead to shady places. But I understand the point he's making.
So you have to be more than gentle now. Are you getting it? And that does not mean cruelty. That means more compassion. More energetic action coming from deeper compassion and deeper sense of responsibility. You will have to give up the notion that these are, first of all, personal choices. No, not personal choices. What you are doing has an effect on me. How is it your personal matter?
Acharya, regarding the population, so generally when on the streets, when I see women begging with their children, or on the streets I see people, I get really angry that, how can they have kids being in the position they are in? Like, one is they haven't figured out a way for themselves. I understand that it is just by chance that the situations that we are born in, the kind of resources we have, it's just a genetic chance, and I understand that, but I really get angry when I see that,
I can understand where she's coming from. Look, like, there are a lot of people in the antinatalist community, especially on like social media, that sort of expressed this opinion in a very sort of I don't know if dismissive, but like immature way, right? And I can completely understand why we would have sympathy for people who have less access to resources. Maybe they're less educated, so they don't, they're not used to thinking about the impacts of their decisions and stuff, or the implications of their decisions. So, and she recognizes that, right? You walk past someone in the street who you can see is in a shit situation and they've had a kid. Maybe they're not that well educated, they don't have access to resources, blah, 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 or maybe there's an element of coercion, all those things are worth taking into consideration. But I can also understand her frustration of seeing people who are clearly in a shit situation and intentionally deciding to reproduce or engage in acts, basically sex, that they know could result in someone coming into existence, right? And I can fully understand that frustration, because I can see those scenes and just think like, oh my God, that situation is so shit. Like, why would they have brought someone else into that? And look, I think it's the same, whatever situation you're in, right? So antinatalism isn't just about telling certain people to not have children, people in certain situations. It's a universal position, right? I don't think anyone should be reproducing. It's always a harm, but you can recognize that you can say that, and you can also recognize that some situations are shitter than others, right? Like, you can be against animal exploitation, but recognize that some forms of animal exploitation are way worse than others, even though you're opposed to all of them. And yeah, so I can understand her frustration and why she's asking the question, you know, because sometimes you just look at the situation people are in and you just think, why the fuck did you do that? Yeah, so I can understand where she's coming from. And I think, you know, I've seen a lot of antinatalists say this stuff online, and I think it's not necessarily the best thing to harp on about and like moan about online, because I think it just gives a bad, you know, image to the community. I can understand why she would ask a sensible question like that in like this sort of context, but I can understand where people's anger come from, obviously.
Very poor people who are not even able to fend for themselves are you know, having kids, and then they just use them as tools further to beg. And so what is, how do we go about dealing with?
You're looking in not exactly the right direction. That kid that you see begging on the street will have a far smaller carbon footprint throughout his life, even if there are 5 such kids in that beggar family. Obviously, that beggar family must not have 5 such kids. But the reasons for not having kids must be social and economic. By having 5 kids, the beggar family is not really causing much harm to the climate, because their consumption levels are extremely low.
So this is an interesting one, because before he was centering his antinatalism around suffering, right, and the impact on the individual being created. And now he's talking about how, you know, someone could have a larger family, but it not actually be as bad as someone who has a smaller family if the net amount of consumption, basically, that the children are doing is less. Now, there are 2 things that could be happening here. One, he could be changing how he's speaking about antinatalism. But the second thing is, he could also, I don't know what event he's at. He could be at specifically a climate event. So that's why he may be answering all his questions in terms of the environment. Maybe this event is specifically about how can we reduce our environmental impact. So, in fact, maybe it will say in the description. So it says here, context, what is really good, what is environmentalism, why is environmentalism not enough, how do we stop climate change? So yeah, it looks like he was at some sort of climate event, so I can understand why he's discussing all of this in terms of climate.
Wait. Their numbers do not matter. India has 1.4 billion people. India's carbon footprint is very small compared to that of the US. So numbers right now don't matter that much. Compared to this, the 1 or 2 kids that an affluent family has are a far bigger problem. Think of their carbon footprint. And having a kid is not merely having a kid. It is a geometric progression. You have a kid, the kid will have kids, and then they will have kids. It's not one person you have given birth to. You have given birth to 100 persons. There is an estimate that says that a woman can do all sort of climate activism all her life. And save a few tons of carbon emissions. But if she just decides to have one less child, she can save 6 times more carbon emissions without doing anything else.
I feel like the framing of that is a bit off, because if someone has one less child than they intended, or they don't have any children, they haven't saved any carbon. They've just not put it into the atmosphere, if you get what I mean. Yeah. I don't know if I've sort of conveyed what I mean, but hopefully you get what I mean.
Either she can go out 4 hours every day of her life and indulge in tree plantation and this and that, and every single day of life she can indulge in climate activism. And that will result in the lessening of the global climate load by X tons, right? The other option is don't do anything. There is no need for any climate activism. Just have one less child. And by having one less child, you will save 6x tons of carbon dioxide emissions. Are you getting it? It is available. It is not being shared and broadcasted. It is very much available. Where else am I getting it from? I didn't meditate and get this knowledge. I'm getting it from public sources.
It's just that people become too emotional if we tell them have one less kid. Yeah, even if we, I have tried with a couple of my friends, they're just like, no, my kid needs a company or...
To hell with their emotions. Who are you? When somebody is being dragged to the jail, he obviously feels emotional. So what? You'll have to pay for your follies. When somebody doesn't get selected in an entrance exam, he or she does feel emotional. So what? Just because you are emotional, you cannot be granted a
This guy is on it.
pardon or a favor. Now you see why lack of spirituality is the biggest problem, because when you do not operate from a spiritual center, then you operate from an emotional center. These emotions are what are causing this climate change. And I'm really surprised that so many people who are highly emotional are into climate activism, when the entire problem is of emotions. You are so emotional about that next foreign holiday, right? That is carbon intensive. You are so emotional about having a good, nice nest of your own. That is carbon. You are so emotional about having 2 nice kids. That is emotion, and that is carbon. Emotion equals carbon in a big way. And the problem to this emotional center is nothing but spirituality. Think of it. Whenever you go emotional, you start releasing carbon dioxide, don't you? When you go emotional, you either drink, and that is carbon, or you go and have a party, and that is carbon. This entire model we have based our lives on, this center around which we are living, is flawed.
Okay, there's only 2 minutes left of that one. I think he's talking more about the environment than procreation. So let's go to this next one. So this one's interesting. So this
It is
one
originating from...
So this one is called The Biggest Act of Cruelty Today. Okay, so I think this is a promo.
the world, and that is the state of hinsa. You
Born with some impurities that need to be corrected. Being born with some impurities that need to be corrected.
lots of. Only impurities are born.
Could another way of looking at this be that a baby, when they're born, they're still not corrupted by the impurities of the present world? They may have some from their past
Who
reincarnations.
brought
but
impurities in the present world? Did they rain from the skies? You'd say the elders, but the elders were babies one day. Where did they get the impurities from? First of all, spirituality is about realizing that all nonsense emanates from the DNA. You are born with nonsense. That body identification is the fundamental problem and the root cause of all violence. It's the body that is violent because it is the body that is coming from the jungle. We share this body with the chimpanzees, with the dinosaurs, with the lions, tigers. Every single animal in the jungle is this body. And therefore all the problems of the jungle are contained in this body. It's just that jungle does not have the weaponry, the ammunition to execute all the nonsense that arises as some kind of impulse from this body. So they only have impulses, but they cannot execute those impulses. When we have impulses, we have missiles to execute them because we have intellect. Animals only have animalistic prakriti, but they don't have missiles and guns and computers. We are animals with missiles and guns and computers, so we are far more dangerous.
isn't that a guilt-ridden way to think of life?
That's a
saying that
factful way. If that gives us guilt, fine. To me, that gives us responsibility. And to me, that gives us a glimmer of hope. I might be born an animal, but the potential to die free of the animal is possible. In some sense, then veganism is about gaining freedom from the animal. It's not about protecting the animal. When you say you are dependent on animal products, what are you doing? You are dependent on somebody. So veganism is about gaining freedom from the animal, the outer animal and the inner animal. Presently, because we are dependent on the inner animal, so we are dependent on the outer animal as well. When you are truly spiritual, then you are not dependent on the outer or the inner animal. You are free of both.
Tofu Dog saying he's hitting on some things that they've been thinking about lately. What sort of things? Because freedom from the animal is hitting hard. What do you mean by that, Tofu Dog? What have you been thinking about?
And you can't be free of just one of them. When there will be freedom, freedom will have both the sides.
So how do you, I personally believe in the antinatalist philosophy, and I do not intend to procreate myself, although I would.
I think this is going into the clip that we've already seen before, but let's just watch the start of it again to see if the context of the bit of the clip we just saw adds anything.
Consider perhaps adopting children at some point, but how do you, what kind of a world do you see with majority of people being antinatals, and then do you see the human civilization coming to an end at some point in the future? Or how, what
Listen,
does the
what
picture
I'll
hold for
say,
us?
if not considered rightly, will appear either vile or hilarious. There is no great virtue in the human civilization continuing, first thing. If the child is born suffering, why do you want to bring more child to the world to make them suffer? What is the point in?
So Tofu Dog saying largely about how I think that spreading antinatalism is going to be dependent upon getting people to separate themselves from their bodily urges. So I think that is partly true and partly not true. So it depends what you mean by bodily urges. So when you say bodily urges, that makes me think more about like sexual desire, right? Rather than the desire to procreate and you know, raise a child and stuff. And I think one of the interesting distinctions between, because you know, there's people like Karima Kerma who make this distinction between antinatalism and proto-antinatalism. So antinatalism is, you know, the fully fledged thing that we, you know and love today. But then there's been sort of proto versions of antinatalism in the past, which have been religiously informed, or they've been slightly incomplete, or, you know, but they have sort of kernels of antinatalism. And when I went to Hamburg recently to speak to Kareem and Lenny, we were discussing this, and they were saying that one of the ways that antinatalism is distinguished from, or one of the ways that modern antinatalism could really be realized, even though I don't think this defines it, but it helped it be realized, is the recognition that that there is a distinction between sex and procreation. So it was very hard in the past. People could be celibate, and people were celibate. There were actually, you know, large groups of people that, you know, were celibate for this reason. But for example, Koenig, who I've, you know, one of my recent videos has been a discussion with Kareem and Lenny on Koenig. Koenig recognizes in his writing, he says, we should, you know, coming into existence is a harm. We should avoid procreating. We should not procreate. It's immoral. And you know, we should allow humanity and life to fade out. And one of the things he talks about is that people can still enjoy sex and their sexual desires and stuff like that. Because of modern contraception, it has detached sex and procreation, which is really interesting. And they kind of see that as one of, not the only, but one of the sort of watersheds between proto-antinatalism and antinatalism. So yeah, it's good that you know, contraception lends itself to us. It means that people can choose not to procreate, and they don't have to forgo this strong sort of, as you say, bodily urge. And then Tofu Dog says, kind of like how veganism plays better once people recognize that if they don't need animal products to survive. Exactly. And even better if people have a replacement that sort of satisfies the same sort of desires. So replacement products, maybe lab-grown meat one day, that sort of stuff. And yeah, and then Tofu Dog says, sorry, it's a bit challenging to convey these thoughts through chat. No, I get that. And yeah, one day we'll do a video together, and we can discuss this. Cool. Cool. Okay, and welcome to the chat, Daniel, as well. Right.
Ensuring that the cycle continues. What is the great need or the great virtue? And what is the great catastrophe, if at all, you know? Second thing, not everybody is born to be self-realized, right? The average kind of people will always outnumber the ones who understand. So the human race will continue, don't worry. There will.
And I've also just seen, just a little shout out as well. So Tofu Dog recently did a video on antinatalism, book review of Ken Coates' book, which I am partway through reading myself. It is, it's up there somewhere. I don't know if you can see it. It's the, fucking hell, how am I going to do this? So there's the clock. So it's the, oh, where's my finger? This is so difficult to do. There's a purple one somewhere up here. I don't know if you can see it, but that's that book. So yeah, everyone go over to Tofu Dog's channel and check that video out. I'll check it out later. I've added it to my watch later list. It's only very recently published. I didn't see you put that one out. Cool. Okay, nice one. Welcome to the chat, Zenemir, I think. Cool. Okay, nice one. Let's continue. Actually, let's just see if it contains anything at the end that we didn't see in the other clip.
Possible to ignore. What do? You fight it without caring for the results. What else can you do?
Okay, right. That's that then. Okay, cool. And then this is the last one for the stream.
There is another reason why kids appear so fascinating.
So this one is called The Violence of Giving Birth. Just by the title, I kind of guessed that he's going to go in hard on this one. So let's see.
To us, it's the hormones. It's not only the human kid. The babies of even animals appear so cute. That's a ploy of Prakriti. Babies have to appear cute, otherwise they are so defenseless that they would be smashed. Babies must appear cute. That does not mean that babies have something extraordinary in them. It's just that you are conditioned to find any baby cute. The baby of a pig is cute, the baby of a monkey is cute. Even little snake.
The babies of pigs are very cute. He is right.
You don't feel like
I don't know about snakes though. I think he's going a bit too far with that. Snakes are fucking scary.
killing. If you come across a full-grown cobra, then in fear or in self-defense or in just madness, you may want to kill it. But if you come across a little snakelet just emerging from the egg.
Snakelet, I've never heard of that one. What a legend.
You may even put it on your palm and, say, oh, see how nice, how cute. What you found, baby? Prakriti does it so that the snake species may survive. But this is something that we do not understand. And regrettably, I say that most women do not understand. They have such fascination for babies that for the sake of babies, they often destroy all their life. I'm not saying that men do not have that fascination. Many men also have that fascination, little babies. It doesn't matter whether it's a man or a woman. It's your responsibility to understand where that fascination is coming from. Biological, sexual. Obviously, if you want to have kids, then sex becomes legitimized. Not only legitimized, sex then becomes venerable. So many strands of thought, so many religious schools have emphasized that the only rightful purpose of sex is procreation. So if you want procreation, then sex is okay. Get out of this obsession with kids. The more you obsess with kids, the more you show how body-centered, egg-centered, and Prakriti-centered you are. This entire planet is suffering because of man's obsession with kids. You produce kids as if the kid would forever remain a kid. You totally forget that the kid would soon, very, very soon, be a fully grown-up individual.
Yeah, I think he's kind of sort of like waving around on this one. But one good point I think he makes is that when I mean, it's even baked into the language, right? So, I mean, it was ages ago I said that we should move away from saying having kids to creating someone, and, you know, trying to establish a new norm. And I just haven't done that myself, so that's my bad. But you can see how our confused thinking around procreation is even embedded in the language, because we say something as simple as having kids. And having kids, it does two things. It's more, and so it does two things compared to creating someone, right? So having kids is more passive, right? Whereas creating someone, there's an active there, creating an active term. And it is an active thing you're doing. You're intentionally choosing to do this. It's not just something passively that happens to you. The second thing is that it uses the word kids, and creating someone says someone, right? So it's understandable why people use the term kids, because obviously when someone is created, they're created as a kid, and then they grow up, right? But I think that having someone hides the active participation in the act, and also the fact that you aren't just creating a child, you're creating a whole other being. And I think if we were to reframe it in the fact that you're not creating just a child, you're creating a teenager, a middle-aged person, an old-age pensioner, and then someone who is going to die. And I think if we draw the attention away from focusing on the early ages, the early period of life, when it's very romanticized, kids are cute, you know, they're just exploring the world, everything's new, you know, you can introduce them to everything. If we take focus away from there and spread it out to the whole of the life you're creating, right? You're creating someone who will eventually die, who will, you know, probably get dementia, or their body and mind will deteriorate in some other way, or they will probably get a cancer diagnosis at some point. All of the stages of life, I think people will be able to make not a sober, but a more sober judgment on the matter. Because I think that the phrasing of having kids is very unhelpful, and I think it masks over some important details in the act of procreation. Maybe I'll do a video on that. I don't know. Yeah.
But for 3 years of Kuchiku, you burden the planet with 100 years of the excreta of that full-grown individual. For how many years do you get to Kuchiku the kid? 3 years. And for how many years does that kid destroy the planet? 100 years. You do not see that. After 3 years, do you pack the kid back and parcel it back to your uterus? After 3 years, you leave the kid upon the world. Or you say that now I am busy preparing for the next one. So this one can now go out and destroy the streets.
He fucking loves dropping in waiting time, doesn't he? And he like sort of licks his lips while he does it. He fucking loves it. He marinades in that shit.
It is very strange how religions have often said that it is violence and sinful to kill. But no one has ever emphasized that there is great violence in procreation. Today, ahimsa consists less of not killing. Today, the greatest act of ahimsa is to not to reproduce. Violence lies less in killing. Today, violence lies much more in giving birth. But if somebody is assaulting someone, you are quick to deplore. You say, oh, such violence, such violence. And if you come across a pregnant woman, you suddenly become so decent, so gentle, so accommodating and so tolerant. If someone practices black magic, then you say that he is, badly conditioned by centuries of rituals, right? If you find somebody practicing black magic, then you are quick to decry. Oh. Medieval rituals. And how old is this ritual of procreation, I ask you? And why must this continue as a ritual? Why can't there be any wisdom in the decision? Why must you habitually procreate? Why must you take it as an obligation to procreate? Why must you feel that a part of your life remains unfulfilled if you are childless? Is it not hoodoo and voodoo and black magic to believe so much in maternity and pregnancy and...
Okay, I don't know how much he is going to be talking about antinatalism anymore, so I'm going to put it on 1.5. But we will see out the video because it is the last one for the stream.
The fullness of the nest. But no intellectual would come forward to say that maternity today is mostly an act of great violence. We keep on talking of saving life. Without ever knowing the meaning of life.
Even on 1.5 speed, that was a long pause.
There would be a blood donation camp and the hoarding would read, donate blood, save a life. And you feel like asking, save what exactly? Save what? What do you mean by life? A breathing mass of flesh, that's life? What's life? Something that begins when the child emerges from the body of the mother? What is life? Do you really want to save life? Then first of all, learn what life is. Then you will really be interested in life and much less interested in giving birth.
And he had to see it out on a pause, didn't he? What an absolute legend. Right, okay, right, we brought it back to me. So, that was Acharya Prashant. And what I will do is I am going to... I'm going to get the link to all those videos. I'm going to put them in the description of the stream once we've finished. But my general thoughts... So, I was actually sort of impressed with the sort of development of his thinking on that. I mean, look, I didn't agree with everything he said. So I'm just trying to sort out the stuff on my screen. Look, I don't agree with everything he said. We differ in some places. I don't put as much emphasis on the environment, but you know, in the places that we did agree, I appreciate the yeah, but I appreciate a lot of the things he said, and I think he's clearly, he's got I mean, to be fair, he doesn't hold back in certain places, but I can appreciate the message he's putting out, given that he seems to have a decent audience. And yeah, I don't know if I have much more to add, actually. Like, I appreciate the things he said. I think he was more developed in his thinking on antinatalism than I thought he'd be. There were spiritual elements to it, but it wasn't all spiritual, which was also interesting. And it'd be interesting to have a conversation with him as well. I will do more research on him before I put the video together. But I will be making a video about whether he's an antinatalist or not, as part of that video series. If you're watching this now, you already know the answer. He clearly is. But I'll put a little, video together and we'll see how it goes. But cool. Before we end, I'll quickly give you a little update on things that are coming up. So this Sunday, I have a discussion on a recent video I put out on whether antinatalists should use the red button thought experiment or not. I had a friend of mine reach out who he also makes videos, and you will see his video come out first, and then I will be publishing mine on Sunday, so that'll come out. So that'll be a discussion on, was I wrong in the things I said in my video about the red button? You'll have to find out on Sunday. What other videos have I got coming up? Let me quickly get up my schedule. So I know I've got a few other ones. So I've also got a video on misconceptions about antinatalism coming up. And I actually did if there are any big misconceptions you think float around in the sort of intellectual sphere or just online about antinatalism, or there's just common misconceptions you think people have, then I made a post on the community tab on my channel asking what are the biggest misconceptions about antinatalism. Comment on there, let me know what you think the biggest misconceptions are, and I will consider them for the video. And yeah, then I've got this video on Acharya Prashant also coming up. So those are the few videos I've got coming up at the moment. I've got a bunch of other ones also in the works, but well, actually there's the Marie Eo one as well, which I've mentioned a few times in videos before. So she is a really interesting figure. So she was around at the end of the 19th century and the beginning of the 20th century in France, and she was part of this neo-Malthusian movement. But she was like the neo-Malthusian movement was basically a movement that was advocating for lower birth rates. But she was a standout figure in that movement, and she was sort of seen as a hardliner of that movement. And she was actually a full antinatalist. She was like, no one should be reproducing. It's wrong. She goes as far as to call people who procreate murderers. She was also a big animal rights person. I don't know if she was vegan, because I've seen some accounts of her lectures where it has said that she's gone to the side of the stage and drunk a glass of milk. But it was all in French and I was translating it. So it could be a mistranslation, or it could be that she wasn't drinking milk, but she was drinking something that looks like milk, because all of the information about her is either stuff she's written, and I haven't seen her mention, milk in the stuff she's written, or it's newspaper articles of journalists who have gone and sat in the audience, and they're not necessarily going to know what she's drinking up there, and they might have just strung it together for a narrative or whatever. So she could have been vegan. I don't know. There's no confirmation either way, I don't think. But if she existed nowadays, she definitely would be vegan. I mean, she would be hardcore nowadays. She would be one of those people who, sets off bombs in vivisecting animal laboratories and stuff. So she's a really interesting character, controversial character in her time. She would even be controversial now. but she was a really interesting one to research. So I've got a full video fully written up already, all the script. I've just got to record it. So that's also in the pipeline. So look forward to that. Cool. Right. Well, thank you everyone for joining. It's been a relatively well-attended stream, so I'm glad people enjoyed it and stuck around. Thank you to the 2 people who donated and helped me try out the thing of the popping up on screen. That was really useful. Thank you so much. And also just for supporting as well. Thanks everyone for engaging in the chat. It's been nice to see people talking and interacting with you guys. And I guess I will see everyone in the next one.